Hello, everyone, and welcome to Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. I'm your host, retired NYPD Sergeant Bill Cannon, and with me today as my co-host, straight out of Brooklyn, retired NYPD Detective Phil Grimaldi. How you doing today, Phil?
I'm doing pretty good, Billy. How about you?
Good. We've been covering the Orrin and Orson West case when, of course, that horrible information came in that press conference. I believe it was on Wednesday of last week. And it's almost unbelievable to people. And I mean, we're in law enforcement. We've seen these tragic events take place. We've investigated some of these tragic events. But to hear and see the evil that these two people committed upon these two innocent young boys is just, it's almost something devilish. It's just horrendous that you could believe that two adults seemingly, you look at them, they don't look like bad people. Can you tell? Can you look into someone's soul by looking into their eyes? But they don't look like bad people. However, they're accused of doing a heinous, heinous crime. And I'm just going to start the broadcast today with part of the district attorney, Cynthia Zimmer, her press conference, which really opened up this whole ball of wax into the reality of what happened to these poor little boys.
Billy, it seems like animals are treated better than these kids were treated, unfortunately.
That's for sure. Let's hear what she had to say.
They were not located. 1 week later, crucial information came to light that necessitated the involvement of the Bakersfield Police Department and the Kern County District Attorney's Office. Law enforcement worked diligently, hundreds of hours in the next 12 months, looking for the boys. This morning, I'm saddened to announce that the investigation has revealed that Orrin and Orson West are deceased. The investigation has also revealed that they died 3 months before their adoptive parents reported them missing. However, I am pleased to announce that this week, the Kern County Grand Jury indicted Trezell and Jacqueline West, the adoptive parents, for the murder of Orrin and Orson West. The indictment charges 5 counts. The first count is murder, charges them both with murder, with the victim being Orrin West. The second count charges murder, with the victim being Orson West. The third count charges felony child abuse against the person of Orrin West. The fourth count charges child abuse against the person of Orson West. And the fifth count charges false report of an emergency. Naturally, the first 2 counts carry the most time in state prison, murder. It is charged as murder in the second degree. That carries 15 years to life, but with 2 victims, the potential penalty or the maximum possible penalty, if convicted, is 30 years to life for each defendant, Trezell and Jacqueline West. Now, the grand jury indictment is a formal charging document, and we followed a process in charging them before the grand jury, and that was the district attorney requested that the grand jury convene to hear evidence regarding an indictment that we presented them. The district attorney's office.
So, Phil, we've heard this before. The folks in the chat, people following this case, have heard that before. But what they don't totally understand, I don't think, the layman, is that the investigation that took place, I believe they interviewed over 50 witnesses. Just think of the amount of law enforcement personnel that was involved. All the while, they were going through the guise of searching for these boys when they knew, in fact, that they were dead. But they couldn't allow Trezell and Jacqueline to know that they knew, because that would have compromised the investigation. So just think of all the witnesses. Open up a grand jury, and people have asked in the chat, did Trezell and Jacqueline know that a grand jury investigation has taken place? Folks, a grand jury investigation is top secret, and it never gets out. The grand jurors are told not to talk about the case with anyone, not to discuss it. Witnesses are told the same thing. Do not discuss that you were a witness. Do not discuss this case with anyone. Could it leak out potentially? Yes, it could. But grand jury proceedings, for that reason, are meant to be secretive, so that folks that potentially could be getting charged are not raised up as to the existence of a grand jury. Phil?
Well, right off the bat, Billy, when you talk about the grand jury, it's always been known as a secret proceeding. It's the first stages in proceeding with criminal charges. You look for an indictment in the grand jury. That shows that there's enough evidence put forward, which is usually kind of on the basic side. They don't put the whole case in a grand jury. However, they do try to get some of the evidence introduced at the grand jury. Sometimes there could be specific witnesses that will testify in the grand jury, but it's always on the surface. It's not really in depth. However, it is a secret proceeding, and usually there is a true bill voted. That means that the grand jurors have voted to indict the person on the criminal charges, which is the process now moves forward. Okay, so now you have a person indicted. Now the wheels of justice, the criminal justice system in the United States, now you can move forward to go into processing an arrest and move forward with charges, hearings, and trials as such. Now, I just wanted to make a quick comment about Trezell and Jacqueline. Now, it's been historically known that a lot of time child abusers are sometimes victims of child abuse themselves. So I would want to look into the history of both of those people. I think that would be something solid and concrete that could be introduced at a criminal trial to say, there's a pattern of child abuse. You can make that argument based on studies that have been done in the past. You can bring in experts, and a large percentage of the times, child abusers, if you look at some of the high profile cases, I'll go into the Steinberg case in New York many years back. Both of the people that were involved in that case, it was a husband and wife that killed a little girl. Lisa Steinberg, I believe was her name. And they were both victims of child abuse. So if you did a little bit of, investigation into the past of both of these people, you may find that they were victims of child abuse. That can lay the platform for the abuse that was put upon these two young children. Again, and then you had the other family members. I'm sure that there was intensive investigation into them, questioning with regards to how they were treated. And we know that they may have even actually taken part in some of the horrific goings on that happened to these two little kids.
You know what we also found out is that there was a total of 6 children. There was 2 biological children, and there was 2 other adopt children. And in fact, I have a short little video of the mother of one of them, of 2 of the boys that were adopted by them too. And I ask now, how were they able to adopt kids when their backgrounds, I guess no one looked into this. I don't know how no one was raised up by the fact that they potentially were abusive parents. But I'm going to play this. This is the biological mother of the boys known as Guillermo and Eltero Pata. That's their names. And they were 8 and 10 years old. I'm going to play this.
Her own. 17's Robert Price spoke to the parents of 2 other boys who they say are lost in the system.
With the adoptive parents of young Orrin and Orson West now accused of their murder, another set of parents whose children were put in the care of the same people are asking, what about their sons? Virginia Williams says she has not seen her sons, Guillermo and Eltero Parra, ages 8 and 10, for 5 years. And at some point, she says, they were placed in the foster care of Trezell and Jacqueline West. That's the couple charged Wednesday in the alleged murders of Orrin and Orson, ages 4 and 3, after more than a year of investigation that included combing the desert around the West's home in California City. By that time, DA Cynthia Zimmer says Orrin and Orson had already been dead for 3 months, which leaves Magenia Williams in anguish. Where are her boys? She and Israel Munoz, the boy's stepfather, say Kern County Child Protective Services isn't giving them any answers.
We don't know where they are. I'm asking for proof of life.
Proof of life, a phrase usually associated with kidnapping. Williams says a court official told her in confidence that her son's initial foster care placement was with Trezell and Jacqueline West, and that scares her.
Been there 6 years now. They were adopted all out in 2018 to the West. And then from there, I've seen and heard nothing from them.
Kern County Human Services tells 17 News they can't comment on any aspect of Williams' story. Munoz says the whole system is unfair.
It's breathtaking, but that's how CPS does things. CPS will come in your house, they break up families, they don't need to be broken up.
Yeah.
And then they give these kids away like they're puppies. I mean, where's our constitutional rights?
Williams says the situation is part of a bigger issue, helplessness born of multi-generational incarceration. She says she was raised as a ward of the Los Angeles County court system from the age of 2. She has been to prison herself, and she says one of her sons, raised largely in foster care, has developmental issues that she fears will impact his life. And the chain continues.
My father and my mother went to jail for prison for murder. And I've lived with my grandma. Being that I am awarded to the court, every child that I have, by law, they have the right to take. Because I am a state baby. And this is the flaw that we should fix today. Because just because we are victims and we had no mothers, that should not hold above our head.
Guillermo and Electado Para, where are you? It's a simple question their birth mother would like an answer to. In Bakersfield.
Oh, a lot to say about that.
Horrible situation. Yeah. But you know something? The Bureau of Child Welfare is never going to tell a mother who had the children taken away from her. They're never going to tell that person where the children are. Annie L., does this mean there? Thank you so much for the $10 super chat. Does this mean there may be a grand jury in the Summer Wells case and we just don't know it? Very, very possibly. Absolutely. Because it's a secretive investigation. There very well could be a grand jury working right now. And as they'll never stop working on that case. We don't know, again, because grand juries are secretive. Getting back to the Miss Williams. So Bureau of Child Welfare is never going to tell what I'll jump to the fact that she's an unfit mother. They're not going to tell an unfit mother who had the children removed where the child is. I mean, I don't know where she got that term from, proof of life. Proof of life is used in kidnappings.
Absolutely.
You know, it's not used in child abuse cases where her children were taken away from her. Look, you feel horrible for these people, but you can see that she doesn't seem like the most fit mother either. And horribly, that the children that taken from her were given to 2 other people that have been proven to be totally unfit parents.
You know, Billy, when we were off the air before we went on today, we were trying to figure out how it went from a foster care to adoption. I think she kind of laid it out. To me, it sounds like these kids were removed at some point because she was obviously an unfit mother. And these type of people that are victims of their own existence because she came from jailed parents that were jailed for murder, she said. She was caught up in the system, and now she is continuing the cycle. Like I said, she's a victim of her own existence, unfortunately. And that really is a terrible thing to say, but it's a fact, you know. But I think what happens is the way the system, family court system works in New York, I'm obviously familiar with that from being on the NYPD. When a kid is placed into foster care, at some point, they would always try to keep contact or to reestablish contact with the birth mother. However, there is a process that takes place when it appears that the birth mother or the birth parents aren't going to be, looks like there's long-term issues or they're not going to be stable parents. A lot of times they will be asked to relinquish their rights as parents. And if the people who are in foster parenting the children, they will be asked if they'd like to do a full-fledged adoption. That may be what had taken place in this case. We don't know for certain, but I don't think that the state can just arbitrarily, because she said she was a victim of the system, that she was a foster care child, and that because of that, they just removed her kids and gave them up for adoption. I doubt that that's the case. There would probably have to be some either strong case to take the kids away and put them up for adoption and take away the parental rights of that woman, or she would have to relinquish those rights. It would be one of those two situations. That is what makes the most sense to me from a legal standpoint.
Charisma, thank you so much for the 199 super chat. No, folks, I don't think that the woman who was talking, Miss Williams, was being correct in her statement. I don't think that because she was a ward of the state that automatically she has her children removed from her. I think it's her criminal history and probably her drug history that has child welfare removing her children and making them a ward of the state. I don't think because she was probably born in prison and both her parents committed murders, that's not the reason they took her kids away. Folks, this is Police Off the Cuff, Real Crime Stories. If you like this show, please go to our YouTube, hit the subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, ring that bell. And you want to support us, we have a Patreon with 3 different levels. And you see the folks in the chat with the green font. They're part of our YouTube family. We have 5 different levels. We appreciate all you guys that have been supporting us. This case, it's a very, very difficult case. And Phil and I have worked numerous child abuse cases, numerous child homicides. And they're always the most difficult cases to work because as a human being, to think that someone can hurt a child is really disturbing, And I know that there was, I once had a 13-year-old kid was stabbed to death in the projects, and at the same time, my son was 13 years old, and I took that so personally that I couldn't even go home. I wanted to stay at work till the case was solved, and eventually we arrested a 16-year-old that stabbed a 13-year-old to death. And it was so horrendous. And I remember after a trial, it was 2 trials. The first trial was a hung jury. The second trial, he was convicted. He stood up in front of the judge and the judge said, "You have anything to say?" And he had nothing to say. And she goes, "I look at the face and you show absolutely no remorse. You took the life of a 13-year-old boy. Therefore, I hereby sentence you to 25 to life." And I was just like, wow. This kid was 16 years old, and he just got sentenced for 25 years to life. And I was just, but he took someone's life that was 13 years old over some stupid gang nonsense, So when you see a child hurt, a child killed, it stays with you, and it's a horrible, horrible thing. In this case, I just want to segue toward
Bill, I want to make a comment on that because you brought up, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you brought up the fact that you had a 13-year-old kid that was killed and you were working a case. In 1984, I had the occasion, I was in uniform, and I had a 13-year-old boy who was stabbed, died in just about in my arms. As we were putting him into the ambulance, he gave us a dying declaration and we made an arrest. These are just some of the scars of war, as they say. I mean, when you're in law enforcement, these are the things that stay with you. You talk about post-traumatic stress and stuff like that. These are the type of things. And you're right, Billy. I'm glad that you made that point that, when it comes to kids, it really, you want to give that little extra to the case. You want to really try and find justice for these kids. And unfortunately, there's these situations where these kids in the family court system, they slip through the cracks, unfortunately. And one quick other point I wanted to make, I know that the family court system in New York State, it kind of favors the birth parents. Even if there's some drug use or drug addiction, they still don't remove unless they go into the home and they see that the children aren't clean and fed and live in some type of environment. So for kids to be removed, it really has to be on the extreme side. I just wanted to make those 2 points.
No, exactly. 616 Love. They do look into family history and use that against the people whom they are interviewing. It's fact. I've witnessed this on multiple levels. 616 Love, I don't know what position you have if you work in child welfare or social work. They have to look into family histories. People, not everyone deserves to have the kids that they procreated. If you don't do the right thing, you don't feed them, you don't take care of them, you don't provide them a safe home, you don't provide them with a loving family atmosphere, you don't deserve to have those kids. And that's why there is organizations like child welfare that have to look into these cases, because look what even happened with the Orrin and Orson West. I mean, they were given up for adoption, and look who they handed them over to. I mean, it's just you almost can't.
It's horrific.
fathom.
It's really horrific. And you're making the point, Billy, that these child protective services, or we used to call it Bureau of Child Welfare, those agencies are put in place to prevent these horrible, horrible situations. And unfortunately, the system really failed in this case. And I guess we got to try and figure out and point out the failures and try and correct them so that it doesn't happen again.
Well, you know, there's always going to be failures in that system. First of all, because they're dealing with horrific situations. People that have drug problems, they're poor, they have no education, they have drug, alcohol, and potentially, I'd say 80 to 90% of the time, they've been abused themselves. So the abused becomes the abuser, you know?
That's right.
And so it's not always, everyone always likes to blame child welfare and child protective services. However, they have an unenviable job, a very, very difficult job. They're not paid very well. And Twin Thong, you just said case overload is exactly right. Yes, they are overloaded with cases, and they're expected to still get good results, even though they're worked way harder than they should be. A lot of times they're going into unsafe locations by themselves. Some of these housing projects we used to walk into, we had guns, you know, and we'd walk in 2 or 3 of us. And these child protective agency workers have to go in by themselves. I mean, they can call the police to give them an escort, but in these busy precincts, the police don't have time to do it lots of times. So they could be waiting hours for the police to show up. So these are horrific situations. I just want to get back into talking about the investigation. Now, the grand jury investigation, obviously, they can take their time, and they did take their time. I mean, look how long it took for this indictment to come down, because they have to be thorough. They have to cross their T's and dot their I's. They had a lot of people to interview. They also probably had a lot of physical evidence to dig through. I mean, search warrants. I mean, I don't know how many search warrants were served upon in regards to this case. I know Duty Ron had that information on his site the other day. And it was, I think it was over 100 search warrants they had enacted with this. And they're still looking for the bodies of the boys. Will they ever find the boys? Will they ever get closure by finding the remains of Orrin and Orson West? That's one of the things that we're all hoping for. However, when you think about evidence that's going to convict, you know, Trezell and Jacqueline West, we're talking about not just physical evidence, but testimonial evidence. And that's probably the other children, the other 4 children, their testimony can be the smoking gun and can put Trezell and Jacqueline in prison for the rest of their lives, hopefully, that they never walk another free day. And those, you know, I'm sure that started out with social workers when they removed the kids. This is a picture on the screen of Trezell and Jacqueline in court on Thursday. I believe that was their arraignment, in which they both pled not guilty. I believe, I know they had counsel earlier. I don't know if they're going to continue with their counsel or they're going to be assigned counsel from legal aid. The picture you're seeing on the screen now is when they had, it's probably the day after they reported the missing, and they spoke with such, they couldn't even look at the camera, you know, and they were just, it was so obvious, like they were lying, they were being deceptive, they were not telling the truth. And we called that out numerous times. And the fact that he could not look straight ahead, that he had his arms folded the whole time. I think the whole 13 minutes that he was interviewed by the press, his arms were folded, which is a sign of being defensive. And again, I'll repeat, I'm not a body language expert, but I know enough about body language to say that that's a real sign of being deceptive and being defensive.
Yeah, Billy, I think you've had enough interviews in your career to pick up on some body language as I did. And yeah, I think it's clear the body language that they exhibited in that was in the early stages of this whole thing. It indicated deceptive and a defensive posture for sure. Going back to the grand jury, Billy, a lot of times when we see these cases, as the investigation goes on, they won't impanel a grand jury right away. They like to impanel a grand jury probably when some evidence has been developed. And usually, a lot of times, it'll be impaneled towards the end when they feel they're getting close with enough investigative material and evidence to to proceed with an arrest. So, and again, a grand jury can be impaneled for usually the in New York, it's like a 90-day impanelment. That means they can, hit that grand jury with different bits of presentation of evidence and stuff over that 90 days. And they can even extend it in cases. So that's a great point. I have a lot of faith in this district attorney that we saw in that press conference. She seemed very professional. One of the things that she brought out in the press conference that she gave was that a week in, they had pretty good evidence that these boys were not alive. And again, they had to proceed as though there was a search, going on and presuming that they were alive. In fact, that they had inside information and evidence from within the case that that wasn't to be. So I would love to know what that was, how they got to that point. And again, 100 search warrants. That sounds like a lot, Billy, for this type of a case. And I'm wondering, and I'm sure we're going to find out going forward, what type of search warrants those was. Now, right off the bat, I'm going to think, cell phones, computers, stuff like that. So, and that may account for maybe, I don't know, a dozen. But there sounds like there was a lot of other things that were looked into. And I'm sure they're going to have a pretty good, solid case against these two.
Yeah, one of the things that and as I said, I always refer to Duty Ron because I'd say he's the YouTube content creator expert on this case. He covered it from the very beginning.
Absolutely.
I was on his show a bunch of times with Class's father, the one who was famous. I'm not using the correct first name.
Polly Class?
Polly Class's father was on, and the heartbreak of people like that have lost children, and in these cases, it just so many people have followed this case through Duty Ron, and I just want to mention also Midwest Equus and some of the hundreds and thousands of people that search for these boys. Just think of the heartbreaking nature of all the people that earnestly search for them in hoping and praying that they would be found and found alive. And then to find out that it was just a lie. It was a lie. They were already dead. They were searching for two boys. And, I said early on in the investigation, and I'm not trying to say I told you so or pat myself on the back. I said very early on, based on the body language of Trezell and Jacqueline, and the fact that no one had ever seen the boys in California City, I said very early on, they never were there. I said it, I mean, we could play the tape back. They never were in California City. And that was a fact. They never, ever made it to that house. And I think Duty Ron did an excellent job. Again, I'm giving him kudos with the investigation to show that there were no witnesses that ever came forward that said, oh, yes, I saw Orrin and Orson West in the California City house. They never were seen there. So the fact that he was saying, oh, I left the gate open, I turned around and they were gone. Well, were they long distance runners or sprinters? They were 4 and 3 years old. How far could they have gotten? And I know, folks, all you guys that have kids are very elusive. Little kids are quick, but they get tired pretty quick too. So they weren't going to get very far away. If his story was true, they wouldn't have got far away. So his story was utter bullshit from minute one. And when you couple that with his body language, but again, it's easy for me to sit here and say all these things. The police had to do their job, and painstakingly, and I think they did a great job. And they had to be, again, I know it's a cliche, they'd cross their T's and dot their I's, and they had to check every avenue of investigation. And that's what they did, and that's how they found out a week later that these two boys were in fact deceased.
You know, Billy, that's something that comes with experience, what you're talking about. Your opinion early on comes from your professionalism and your experience of 27 years in the police department and investigating these type of cases. Now, to the layman, to the average person, they may have seemed believable, but we as trained investigators will pick up on certain things. The little bit of information that you had at that time is how you came to that conclusion. And, you know, listen, you obviously, and everyone involved in the case or everyone interested in the case was hoping for the best, was hoping for the safe return of these two little young boys. But it was clear to see, I mean, you know, like you said, kids are rambunctious and no one saw them. And I think it was easy based on your experience and your observations of what was going on that you came to that conclusion. So, you know, that's where we as experienced and veteran police officers and detectives can come to those conclusions. That's why we do what we do. And we try to portray ourselves as professional based on facts like that.
Complicated. Is this the scenario? If one of the boys talked but doesn't know where the parents put the boy's body, we might never find them, correct? That's a possibility. Their bodies may never be found. However, I always like to think of the glass as half full. And I think through investigation, there still is a potential that the boys' bodies could be found. You know, we talked about, you know, I can't see anyone in this case, Trezell or Jacqueline, being offered any kind of plea deal. And that's why sometimes the death penalty is a good chip. It's a good chip to, you know, to offer a deal with. But they don't have that in California. So it's not, so they can both be convicted of murder second degree two times and they would get 30 to life. Could they offer one of them, let the less culpable one? I think they're both just as culpable, but could the district attorney's office offer maybe the less culpable one 25 to life instead of 30, with the addendum that that person tell where the boys' bodies are? That's a possibility.
Absolutely, Billy. And, you know, the district attorney's office, if they do get to the stages of sentencing based on conviction, you know, they can put forward that we're going to look for consecutive sentencing based on the horrendous nature of this crime, what that means is if you get convicted of 2 counts of murder and you get 30 years to life on each count, you could physically do 60 years before you're up for parole. And they can ask for the sentences, instead of to be concurrent, they can run consecutively, which means the time would click on both cases. Now, in that case, that person would be eligible for a parole hearing in 30 years. So again, there's a lot of things that could be put forward by the district attorney's office. They hold all the cards right now. They did all these 100 search warrants. They have all the evidence. They did all the interviews. And there may be enough of a case where the district attorney's office may take a hard line and say, no, we're not offering anybody anything. After sentencing or after conviction, then maybe we could talk about maybe placement in a facility that's closer to their loved ones or their families, if they would give over where the location of the bodies are. And again, the district attorney's office may know that they may know what happened to these I hate to even say it, these little kids' bodies. They may be somewhere in a landfill and unable to be recovered. There's things like that. There's situations like that. And again, one of the things that the district attorney made clear was just because there are no bodies found, that does not preclude a positive, investigation and prosecution of these charges.
Rose 1033. Bill, do you think they will charge for the abuse of the other children? I think that'll be included in this indictment. It's almost like, you know, having charges that can carry 60 years to life and then putting a petit larceny in there. It doesn't make any sense. So it'll be sort of included in these charges. I don't think they had 5 charges in the indictment. So I think that'll sort of be included in these court proceedings that they did.
You know what, Billy? It could be a separate case too, because there's those charges were related to just Orrin and Orson. So the other kids, there could actually be a separate case. I mean, depending on what they're told and stuff like that. But again, it's what you said. It's like piling on. If they feel that those charges are so heavy, I guess we have to wait and see. Really, and
Well,
see.
it wouldn't give them any more time, I don't think,
Yeah,
because
it's
the
not gonna.
top charges could give them 60 to life.
Yeah.
Fran Mello, Marie Green, another mom wants to know where her kids are after placing them with the West. Well, she wants to know, but what the story is, Fran, is that that mom is an unfit mom also. So they're not going to tell her where her children are because, in essence, and there's an attorney, I think Complicated is in the chat, she's unfit. So they're not going to tell her where her kids are because potentially she could go to where her kids are and hurt her kids or make the say they're with another family. She could make their lives miserable. So that's why they will never tell a parent who has their child removed. They're not going to tell that parent where the child is.
You know what, Billy, too, when there's a formal adoption, that person does not have the right to know the location or who that child has been placed with. They don't, there's no law that says that they have to. It's actually kept secret. So again, maybe she relinquished her rights. She may have even signed paperwork doing that. So we don't know the whole story. And you brought up the obvious fact that for the safety of those children, that, if she was an unfit mother, she may go try and kidnap them or, God knows what else. So again, I don't have a problem with that they don't want to tell, the location of where those children are. They might be able to, she used that term proof of life. They may be able to say that they are safe and sound and they've been placed with someone that meets the standards and guidelines of the court system, the family court system. And that should be enough. It's not like,
Phil, I'm sure they could tell them, yes, they're alive and well, but
Right,
we
right.
cannot tell you where they are. Let me just play a little bit of this here.
Taylor, what did you learn? Both Trezell and Jacqueline West both pleaded not guilty to all 5 charges this morning. Judge Chad Louis said, quote, "There is clear and convincing evidence that both defendants are a significant and substantial risk to public safety and set no bail." The judge also granted a request from the prosecution for sealing the probable cause declaration and offense reports. In addition, the prosecution also requested a gag order, which was not granted today. A new hearing has been set for March 8th to discuss that request and allow for comments regarding the sealing of the grand jury documents. The trial is scheduled to begin on May 23rd. We also spoke to a member of the boys' biological family following the hearing. We'll bring you their reaction and more coming up today at 5.
So you see, they had a gag order because they don't want to reveal what the grand jury found out. They don't want any news reporters sniffing around and putting this stuff out there. That's both to protect the witnesses. I believe he said the trial is going to start May 23rd. That there's pretty much not a good chance that it will start that soon because of discovery. And folks, we'd explained to you guys what discovery is. Discovery is all the evidence that the prosecution has. They must turn over to the defense, and the defense gets to seal it. And there could be numerous folders, numerous physical, biological evidence. There could be numerous testimonial evidence, and it could take the defense a couple of months to prepare to read that so they can prepare a proper defense for Trezell and Jacqueline West.
And not everything is turned over all at once either, Bill. A lot of times in the first court hearing, they'll go through some, they'll turn over some of the discovery and they'll say, Your Honor, we're waiting on this or that to turn over the rest. And they'll say, all right, let's have another court date down the line. And again, I think you're very correct. May 23rd, I think they said, that's not going to be when the trial starts. I doubt very highly. That's best case scenario. If everything is turned over all in one shot and the defense team can go through everything and say, all right, we're ready to proceed with trial. I doubt highly. And most of the time, the defense is going to ask for, some continuance to look at this evidence and stuff. And the judge is usually going to grant it as long as it's not a ridiculous amount of time. I mean, they'll give plenty of time for, and rightfully so. That's the rights of our criminal justice system that are, are for defendants in criminal cases. They have the right to go through all the evidence, and you have your right to face your accuser and stuff like that. So I'm not going to go into a whole explanation of our criminal justice system, but the wheels of justice do turn slowly sometimes, and rightfully so is the point I'm trying to make. And I agree with you, Billy. I don't think that May is when this case will actually hit the trial stage.
Phil, just want to give this a quick read here.
Sure. Joe Murray, attorney at law. Have you found yourself in a jam? Are you in need of legal counsel in the New York area? Do you need a victim's advocate? Well, Joe Murray is your man. He knows both sides of defense. He's not only an experienced trial attorney, he's also a retired 15-year member of the NYPD. His website is jmurray-law.com. His telephone number is 646-838-1702, or you can email Joe at jmurray-law.com.
There was an interesting, someone just posted something interesting in the chat. I wanted to, let me see if I can find it. Okay. Betty Smith, Diane King, I guess I don't understand. They were being paid to take care of the boys because they took both boys and the boys with special needs. Why kill the goose laying the golden eggs or their income? Well, when they first took them, I believe they were foster parents.
Fostered.
And foster parents get paid. Adoptive parents do not get paid. So I don't fully understand why these two became adoptive parents. And why they arrested two sets of boys. They adopted two. I'm saying arrested. They adopted two sets of boys.
Yeah. There is a financial component too, Billy. They're not going to get paid per se. For fostering children, you get a stipend. You get money for fostering. But if they are on public assistance and they now have two extra children, that's where they may get funding, whether it be food stamps or Section 8 housing or whatever it is. There could be a financial, I don't want to call it a windfall, but there could be a financial component to them actually becoming the adoptive parents. In this case, obviously, I think it's quite obvious these two were not capable of being any kind of parents to these two little boys. So it's an unfortunate situation. And let's just hope that there's changes made and it doesn't happen again.
Diane King, in California, in Kern County, they do get paid when they adopt the children. Well,
Okay.
You may know better than me, Diane. I don't. Usually adoptive parents don't get paid, but however, foster parents do.
Billy, I want to make one other quick point, though. Again, Diane Smith, I think it was Diane Smith. She made that. Betty Smith. She made that point about the money. Maybe these kids, as crazy as it sounds, maybe they didn't intentionally kill them. This might have just been abuse, and then they were accidentally killed or whatever happened. I'm sure we're going to find out. But again, I don't think that they. I don't want to defend them. Now, I'm not taking that stand, but this may have been just child abuse gone awry, and they succumbed to it.
Yeah, I think there was some, and I don't want to totally talk about this because I'm not as versed in the case as say Duty Ron. I think Duty Ron told me that one of the boys, Orrin and Orson, had an old broken leg when they were first adopted. So an old injury, which is very common in child abuse. Sometimes injuries of broken bones never get treated, and no one knows about them because you got to realize these are little boys, little kids, and they have very brittle bones, and they could have a broken bone, and and they could be crying and complaining about it, and then it heals. It heals by itself some way, and then when the investigators look at the children and they X-ray them and they see he's got an old broken leg. I've seen that in child abuse cases. They've found, broken arms, broken, fractured this, fractured that. And you're like, how horrendous that these things could go unnoticed,
That's exactly what happened in the Lisa Steinberg case, Bill. If you remember back, Joel Steinberg was abusing not only the baby, but also his wife. And this kid had injuries from probably when she was a toddler that had healed up. Yeah, like you said, there's ways when they do examination obviously it could be a person that's alive or dead. They can tell that these wounds have now, fractured ribs, broken limbs, different areas of the body, and they can tell that these are old injuries that have now healed up. So I guess that'll be part of the investigation if the bodies of these two little boys are recovered.
Folks, that's why, like, in your capacity in this world, whatever your capacity is, if you're a teacher, if you're a nurse, if you're a physician, if you're a lawyer, if you're a police officer, you come in contact with young children, it's your duty to report suspected child abuse. It's actually your duty. And for a police officer say not to report it is a misdemeanor. It's actually a crime for you not to report it. And others too, teachers, nurses, doctors, if they don't, so you could see how horrible these things, and the child may not be able to speak for his or herself, and they're being abused, and we have to be the advocates for these little children because no one else is going to be.
Absolutely, Billy. I couldn't agree more. And I have absolutely no problem with being that advocate. If I ever saw some type of child abuse, I could think back when I was in the 6-0 squad in Coney Island, and we were up on the second floor and we had windows near our desk. And one of my partners saw a kid getting slapped around, and he ran down. I ran down with him. We threw handcuffs on the guy and brought him right into the precinct. It was in the middle of summer. Coney Island was very busy with an amusement park, and that Subway was right across the street. And these people were coming from the amusement area, and the father actually, and it wasn't even a small child. It was a kid I guess he was about 11 or 12 years old. And the guy just started hitting him, and he pushed him over a small fence. And the guy that I worked with, Joe Lamassa, he was enraged. He went running out. I went running with him, and we handcuffed the guy and arrested him right then and there. So again, that's really, especially if you're in law enforcement, that's your obligation. Like you said, it's a misdemeanor if you don't. So, and anybody that's out there, if you see something you think is not right, you really should have the courage to speak up and either call the police or let someone know, because it could save the life of a little child.
Lisa Nia, at Phil and at Bill, she did the interview weeks ago, the one that aired till last week. CPS took her other kids after she did interview, not after it aired. Is this true? I believe that the kids from Jacqueline and Trezell, I believe as soon as the district attorney's office found out about that Orrin and Orson were dead, they would have immediately have removed the children. And I don't, so the timeline was they reported them missing December 21st. So I think, and I don't have the exact timeline, they would have taken the other kids as soon as they said a week later, they knew that they may have taken the kids before that because the whole story didn't add up, the story of how the kids became missing. So they may have removed the kids even earlier than the week after they found out that Orrin and Orson were in fact dead.
Yeah, Billy, that's a good point. I would think that they would be hard pressed not to get a hold of child services and say, hey, we have strong information that these two kids are no longer breathing air and deceased. So we need to have those other children removed. I doubt that very highly that they would, forego something like that. And that, like I said, that District Attorney Cynthia, I have it written down here someplace.
Zimmer, Cynthia
Zimmer. Yeah, she sounded very competent to me, and I'm sure that would be the case. If they didn't, that would be a hell of a screw up.
I'm sorry, Lisa Nia, Bill, I'm talking about the bio mother of the two middle boys. The biological mother of the two middle boys, she has, according to her, she hasn't seen them in 5 years.
Yeah.
So they were removed a long time from her. And I don't believe that she put them up for adoption or I think they were removed from her. So that's why she hasn't seen them for 5 years, because she's got her own issues. And I don't know this case to the level I would if I was in fact investigating it, because there is a hell of a lot of information, of course, that we don't know about, all of us involved, including even Duty Ron. Duty Ron has been following this more than anyone that I know. However, unless you really work the case, you don't know the inner workings of all the things and all the information that law enforcement in fact has.
Absolutely, Billy. And, again, I went through the steps of what the family court system does in situations where children are in an unsafe environment. They remove them, they place them in foster care. Then there's a period of time where they try to encourage the birth parent to seek, if it's a drug issue, seek drug counseling. If it's a domestic violence issue, to seek psychological services, anger management, whatever it is. They don't just take the kids and say, all right, we're taking your kids and we're giving them up for adoption. That's not how the system works. I'm sure that there was either a agreement by the birth mother to relinquish parental rights, or there was enough of a case to show that these kids were not going to be in a safe environment and their rights were removed by the court system. It's got to be one of those two scenarios.
Lizzie Wiz, Magdala Williams was arrested because of this interview. Her other kids have now been taken from her. I don't know if in fact that's true. Lizzie, if you know that's true, I saw the interview on the TV. I mean, her kids, I wasn't even aware she had other kids. The two boys that were adopted by the West, according to her, she hasn't seen them in 5 years. So I was not aware of the fact that she had other kids. She seems like she's got problems. She's got issues. And, if she does have other kids, you want them to be living in the healthiest background possible.
Yeah. Billy, real quick, during that interview, we have her name is Virginia Williams. The husband, or I guess step parent, they called him. Sounds like it's the common law, or the husband of her. He made a statement that kids are being taken away from parents without just cause. That's not true. I find it very hard to believe that any social worker would take a child away from a very safe and healthy environment. That's cruel. That's inhuman to do that. He made that statement. He's not correct. I doubt if there's ever a case of that. That would be very highly unlikely.
No, look, child welfare doesn't remove your kids without an investigation and without cause. I mean,
absolutely.
Someone said, how did I ascertain that Miss Williams was an unfit mother? Well, she was raised in the prison system. She had two kids removed from her that she's not allowed to see anymore. All right. She's been arrested numerous times. I made that huge leap. I don't think it's a huge leap either that child welfare doesn't take your kids away and not let you see them for 5 years if you're fit to be a mother. So if I made that huge leap, I think I'm qualified to do that.
Billy, and again, I'm going to point out, you're doing it from a place of experience. It's easy to get to that point and make that, you want to call it a leap or a presumption, whatever you want to call it, but you're basing it on past experience. And we know for fact, and I've been through court system, family court specifically, whether it had been on the job or even with family members, and they always seem to the court system always seems to rule on the side of the birth parents. It's a strong case for them to remove parental rights. Very, very strong, whether it be a divorce situation, a child abuse situation, a child protective services situation. The court system doesn't just arbitrarily take children away from their parents without just cause. And I think your presumption, and I agree with you, Billy, it sounds like she's got issues, and these kids weren't taken away because something small or minuscule. It sounds like there was a strong case to do that, in my opinion.
Alicia B., look at the Wells kids. They were still in their family, and should they have been? I want to ask everyone in the chat, do you think the Wells kids were in a healthy household? Do you think their needs were being taken care of? Do you think both of their parents were solid role models? You think that they were giving the necessary things to thrive as a child? I'm asking you that rhetorically. What do you think? Do you think that? I have my opinions, and you can make observations and give your opinions. And Alicia B., thank you for bringing that up. And I think there's a lot of kids in this world living through hell because maybe we're not doing enough for these kids.
Billy, I want to make a comment to Alicia B. We were the ones that on our podcast early on in this Summer Wells case, we were the ones that were calling for the other children in that home to be removed. And lo and behold, they were. Now, whether or not it was based on, our broadcasting that out there or not, just glad that they were removed, because it was quite clear that Candace and Don were not, the perfect parents. They weren't.
Well, they were a lot less than perfect. They were
Absolutely.
They were both alcohol and drug. They had problems with alcohol and drugs.
I mean, they were obviously, when they did the interviews, they were obviously intoxicated. And then we saw from news accounts and different YouTubers content, we saw the environment that these children were living in, and it obviously wasn't safe. And I think that it was the right move to remove them.
100%. 99 pink balloons. Thank you for the $9.99 super chat. In my opinion, kids suffer through abuse and neglect because the aunts, uncles, grandparents look the other way because they don't want their abusive relatives to get in trouble. Save our kids. Hallelujah. 99 pink balloons. 100%. And if you're protecting an abused child, you're just as bad as the abuser, in my opinion. If you see something, the old adage, say something,
Absolutely.
Fran Mello, you guys talk a lot of sense. I know we do, because we're retired New York City cops. Of course we talk a lot of sense. But thank you, Fran Mello. We're not saying this because, we read a book on child abuse. We lived it. We worked it. We saw the horrors of it. And it's, we can jump from A to B quicker than most people because we've seen this stuff before. And some people don't like us that we're not assuming, we're actually making an educated guess on this,
Yeah, it's an educated opinion based on previous experience. And I'm sure that if the child welfare folder on this woman, Virginia Williams, was pulled, you'd see the reasons why that those children, and they probably documented very, very strong reasons why those children were removed. So again, it's an educated opinion based on previous experience.
Folks, we had really just, again, wanted to come on and talk to you guys today. And this case is heartbreaking in so many different ways, but it's important for us and important for you guys that support us to report our feelings on this case. And we're going to continue with it as it progresses within the criminal justice system. And I just want to thank everyone today that came by on a Sunday afternoon and listen to us and support us. And Phil, final words.
Final words. This is obviously a heartbreaking case. Let's hope and pray that nothing like this happens to any other children. If you see something, like Billy just said, say something. We all have an obligation to protect small children, and we have that same obligation to protect the elderly. That's my opinion. I think that if you put yourself out there a little bit, you may not get a Christmas card at Christmas, but you'll be doing the right thing for some poor little child or some elderly person.
100%. Folks, thank you so much for watching. Have a great Sunday and stay safe.
Enjoy and stay safe, everyone.
One episode just ain't enough.